KRC Magazine, issue number 76, Project Arctos. Title: Religion and Morality. Written by Anonymous. 1. Man is a moral animal. 2. You can get people to do anything if you convince them it is moral. 3. You can convince people anything is moral. In recent years, I've heard many Christians express concern about the religious and moral fiber of America. Most of the time, America's religious fiber and moral fiber are treated as one and the same. The concerns that people express usually go something like this. The American public, and especially the younger generation, are increasingly a religious and anti-Christian. If this country turns away from God, then what will become of us? Slavery. This view implicitly holds the belief that non-Christianity will certainly lead to moral decay, and conversely it claims that Christian devoutness is the same as moral uprightness. Indeed, as Christians, we believe that all that is good comes from God. However, does it necessarily follow that believing in God will lead us to becoming good people? History suggests the answer is no. In fact, history shows us that church more often than not has used Christianity to justify the greatest wrongs of its times. To take one example, today it is common sense that slavery is wrong. Even during America's age of slavery, there were many abolitionists and civil rights activists who could see this. However, in the South, the church did not. In fact, the overwhelming majority of the church used the Bible to endorse and justify slave-holding practices. As noted by the scholar Elizabeth L. Jamieson, Southern ministers had written the majority of all its published defenses of slavery, supported by a strong conviction in the divine sanction of the institution of slavery. After all, Christian anti-abolitionists argued, in Ephesians, Paul bid slavery to obey their masters, and in Philemon, he returned a runaway slave to his master. Furthermore, slavery was common in the Roman world, but Jesus never spoke against it. So didn't that mean that slavery had God's approval? For every Christian abolitionist whose conscience urged them to speak against this cruel and inhumane institution, there was a Christian anti-abolitionist who staunchly believed in its righteousness. Women's suffrage. Similarly, the church at large was in opposition to the women's suffrage movement. Anti-suffragists were quick to point to biblical passages such as Paul's declaration in 1 Timothy that he would permit not a woman to teach nor to have dominion over a man as justification, or to the story of Genesis saying that it was only natural to deny women political autonomy due to Eve's sins in the Garden of Eden. Even today, decades after the women had been granted the right to vote, the majority of women in America belong to a religious community that prohibits them from being leaders. I've observed that the Western Christian world is quick to denounce Islam, Judaism, and pagan religion as barbaric and backward for oppressing women's rights. But strictly speaking, many Christian denominations do the same. As Jesus said, should we not first take the plank out of our own eye before we remove the speck from our brother's eye? Colonialism. The history of Christianity is rife with examples of the injustices the church upheld. There is its role in justifying European colonialism, such as the Catholic Church papal decree in 1452 bidding King Alfonso to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. There is its role in the genocide of Native Americans in taking their land, in kidnapping their children, in enslaving them in missions. In more recent history, there is the fact that almost all Nazis were Christians, and the fact that many modern-day white supremacy groups justify themselves through the Bible too. It is clear that being a Christian state did not preserve these groups' moral characters. As such, when in pursuit of moral clarity, it is not sufficient to pursue Christian values. Christian value historically could mean anything, but what is really the right thing to do? Could you do what you believe was right, even if your pastor, your church, and your community were all telling you that you were in the wrong? Confronting those in power. Perhaps this is too great a challenge to start off with. Let us reduce the difficulty then. Could you confront your pastor if he was doing something that the entire community agreed was wrong? For example, What if your church leader had been sexually abusing members of the church? What would you really do? Sexual abuse in the church. It is easy to agree that sexual abuse within the church is wrong, but it seems that it is as much harder to do something about it. Just 2 years ago, the Southern Baptist Convention, consisting of over 15 million members, was rocked by the release of a 205-page report that named hundreds of Baptist leaders and members who had been accused or found guilty of sexually abusing children. This alone was devastating enough. However, the nail in the coffin was the fact that leaders of SBC's executive committee have focused for decades on trying to protect the SBC from liability for abuse in local churches, rather than prioritizing justice and healing for the victims. This pattern of sexual abuse is not unique to SBC either. A study of sexual abuse in the Catholic Church in America found that some 55% of priests between 1950 and 2002 had at least one allegation of abuse. Furthermore, a 2019 study by Lifeway Research found that 5% of Protestant churchgoers they surveyed had experienced sexual misconduct from a pastor, a church leader, or a staff member of the church. A similar number had stopped attending a church because they felt like sexual misconduct had not been taken seriously. If the church is to be moral authority, surely we can do better than an incidence rate of 1 in 20. I recently heard someone's remark about their Christian church, which went something like this. Once you notice that there's a new church sexual abuse scandal every week, you can't stop noticing it. What a sad remark, and yet it has remained with me since then. In my personal experience, this maxim has been true more often than not. Every time I look up this topic on Google, it inevitably turns up at least one news article from within the past 2 weeks. In light of this ongoing and systematic problem, I can't be surprised when people turn away from the church. Does being Christian equal being morally superior? It is a mistake to think that being a Christian believer, church, or nation means that we will have a stronger moral character or a clear conscience. It is even more of a mistake to think that one's beliefs are right because they are Christian. History shows us that Christians are capable of using Christianity and Christian institutions to perpetuate slavery, abuse, and genocide. And it follows that we too are capable of perpetuating monstrous injustices under the same name. It is easy to dismiss the examples I've given by claiming that the people who perpetuate such evil aren't real Christians. This is only an attempt to escape from having to contemplate difficult questions. We are none of us free from social pressure, ingrained cultural biases, or the desire to believe what's easiest to believe. If that is the case, then how can you be confident that you are a real Christian who is doing the right thing? Where do we go from here? I can't offer answers on how to decide what is right. I can only point to the obvious, that we should think independently, be careful of blind faith, and be wary of excessive confidence in our own correctness. And offer one last anecdote. During Nazi Germany's era of power, a small subset of population chose to heed their conscience and place their moral value over their community bonds, legal protection, and physical safety. These rescuers were often Thai Christians, just like many Christians who helped carry out the Holocaust. This scholar, Robert P. Erickson, notes, shows that some set of universal Christian values was not the only motivating force at play. Religious motivation does not seem to be the most important variable in differentiating between those who did and those who did not risk their well-being to save Jews. Then what was it? The answer perhaps can be found in the story of Le Chambon, a small Protestant village in France that banded together to shelter thousands of fleeing Jews. When interviewed, the individuals who participated in this rescue effort tended to explain their decision in terms of simple humanity rather than in terms of Christian values. Or in the word of local minister's wife, Magna Trachome, those of us who received the first Jew did what we thought had to be done, nothing more complicated. Something people asked me, how did you make a decision? There was no decision to make. The issue was, do you think we are all brothers or not? Do you think it is unjust to turn in the Jews or not? Then let us try to help. The author of this article is a writer, artist, and engineer living on the west coast of the United States. After graduating from college with a deep interest in language, philosophy of consciousness, and the interplay between fantasy and reality, they enjoy looking for wildlife while on walks in nature.